The more into watches I get, the more inside watches I feel that I am. And there is no brand that I would rather be inside than a. Lange Söhne. This is a brand whose mechanics are almost like that scene from Inception where Leo is seeing the city sort of wrap around him. I have this perverse dream of being small enough to be inside a Lange watch and to be able to witness these beautiful horological time machines from inside. And from that vantage point, there are some things I would like to explore. Firstly, the finishing of these watches. There are 9 different types of finishing I learned that I could see even better from inside that vantage point. The second thing I'd like to explore is why are these watches assembled twice? Why does Lange invest in fully assembling a timepiece, then disassembling it and assembling it all over again? This is something I wanted to ask the brand for years. And lastly, why is Lange that brand that is always mentioned on the edge of the Holy Trinity? I was so privileged to get this chance to not only visit the manufacturer, but to spend so much quality time with Mr. Wilhelm Schmid, the CEO of Lange. This is an experience I will never forget, and you can come on the journey with me. We're going to start right at the drop zone in Glashütte at the Lange manufacturer. Let's go. And the CEO is right here to welcome us to the manufacturer.
Andrew, hi, welcome.
Mr. Wilhelm Schmid, meet Time+Tide.
Wonderful.
Shall we go inside?
That's a good idea. Please come in.
Thank you. Wilhelm, thanks again for having us in your house.
Yes.
It is not uncommon for brands outside of Switzerland to launch a broadside, to come at the Swiss and say, we can match you at your level and exceed your level. However, very, very few succeed and very few find their way into the conversation with the Holy Trinity. And if we are to get straight to the point, because some of it we can find our way through your opinions and your storytelling, but others we're just going to call it as it is. It is the finishing of Lange watches, and to me, the double assembly that really get to the heart of what put you in that top place so quickly.
Why do we do double assembly? Fundamentally, because we use untreated German silver for all ground plates. That's the fundamental reason, because you touch it, you breathe on it, it'll look ugly very soon, so you mustn't do that. Quality and technical quality. So we take these two things apart. So first, the watchmaker will ensure the watch runs perfectly. So that means they will assemble the movement, will adjust the tolerance, and go through a test process. If it survives all the tests, it will go back, it will be disassembled, cleaned, and then they bring on the final decoration, because now they know all the tolerances are adjusted.
Now, one extra telling fact about this first and second assembly is that there are guide screws used for the first assembly, which are these screws down here. The tiny ones are for the chaton, and the larger ones are for the 3/4 plates. The reason that these are used for the first assembly is that in that process of assembling and then disassembling the watch, there can be scratches on the screw heads. So there is a fresh set of screws, chaton screws and 3/4 plate screws, that are used purely for the second assembly, so that in that one motion of screwing in the watch, there are no scratches or any marks at all on the screw heads. And to give a detailed example is that there are 8 gold chatons in the Lange 1, and each of them, in order to be polished, must be pressed into this little disc of very, very soft wood. Once it's pressed in there, you then apply it to this glass plate that has 3 different thicknesses of diamond dust on it, from 0.003 of a millimeter to 0.5 thousandth of a millimeter. And as you apply it in a circular motion and then go from coarse to less coarse, by the end of that process, it is a nicely polished gold chaton that sits in the countersinks on the movement. And that explains why the screw heads holding down your 3/4 plates and bridges and balance cocks are all so perfectly unblemished, despite the meticulous finishing that runs right up to the edges, right up to the countersinks of those screws. And finishing, what a perfect segue. Is there anything more legendary at Lange than finishing? This is a brand that celebrate the art of finishing to such a point that there are displays around the manufacture, almost on every level, on every floor, you will see some information about finishing. Now, there are 9 types of finishing that Lange explain in these displays, and they look the same as their Swiss counterparts, and yet often have a slightly different name, whether that's Glashütte ribbon instead of Côte de Genève, or straight graining instead of brushing. There's always a slight Germanic twist to what they refer to in the finishing of watches. I wanted to ask the CEO, is there any unique finishing skills at Lange we should know about?
None of it is unique to Lange. You know, we all, I mean, the stripe, the Glashütte ribbon is slightly different than the Swiss ribbon, but you know what, that's
Semantics.
Semantics. What is fairly unique to Lange is the way the movements and the decoration of the movements are composed. And they're all different and for different reasons. And I believe the variety we use, and that we use them basically in all watches, I think that is something which you can hardly find in the industry. And for sure not if you go into bigger productions. You know, there's a limit to what you can do. You've seen how many people work for us. Now it's 650 in these buildings, and we produce 5,000 watches. So if you produce 20,000 watches, it becomes pretty clear you don't have 4 times the number of watchmaker, finishers, engravers. You do things differently.
Now, while there are some finishers that specialize in, for example, black polishing, many of the finishers at Lange are actually able to do multiple finishes at one station. Beate here is working on 4 finishes of a balance cock. One of them is circumferential polishing, which is the vertical edges of the balance cock. One of them is straight graining, or otherwise known as brushing, which is along the edges of that balance cock. The next is chamfering, and this chamfering also applies to the inner angles, getting in and polishing the tough to reach inner angles. And lastly, we have flat polishing, which is the same process we saw at the Lange 1 station with the gold chaton on the diamond dust on that glass plate. So we have this duality at Lange between the quest for perfection, consistency, precision, and the freedom, the accommodation of personal style that makes this one component of a Lange unique every single time. I get a little bit of goosebumps because I spent a whole day in the engraving department, and I got to know the other side of the Lange coin, which is the wild and free creative side that you allow to flourish. I would say bloom like a flower. Do you see what I did there? It is truly blooming like a flower on the balance cock. And I met Simone yesterday, who had a very particular style, and we're talking about the fact that each balance cock of a Lange is engraved.
She goes very deep into the material.
She's very deep, and it looks this beautiful interleaving, and Robert's is much more small and precise. However, she said his style has changed. He now does only 4 petals, when originally he did more. So there's a part of your Lange that has a explosion of creativity, and this is the balance cock. Now, as you can see from this oversized balance cock on the wall, each engraver in this room has a slightly individual take on the floral motif on your Lange balance cock. However, there is one collection that has a different theme, and that is the Odysseus. The balance bridge of the Odysseus has a wave motif. So, for the keen eyes, when you're comparing your balance cocks and balance bridges, you will see that there are nuances that are different according to the artisan that engraved your watch. The engraved balance cock is arguably the most personal signature in all of watchmaking. And to prove that, I chose where this wonderful engraving started. And usually Robert would start from this point here. And that's where naturally his hand went. However, I said, no, stop. Start from here. So we actually started this floral pattern from a totally different point to usual. And this is what's emerging, quite a different pattern that you're seeing now. I asked Robert, what's the hardest part of this design? And what is the part you're most likely to mess up? That was, in fact, the outline that the design lives within. The other important question to ask an engraver about their work is just how much freedom does the engraver have to go where their engraving tool takes them? And the answer is complete freedom within the boundary of this being a floral pattern.
It's a little bit like handwriting. You know, some have a very pronounced handwriting, easy to identify, and others have a more similar. They will be able to distinguish clearly who is who in the zoo. If you say strive for perfection, I would agree on that. On the other hand, because it's a human being that does it, even the best ones will not be able to do exactly the same things twice. And then you take a lens and you look into it and you see how imperfect they are factually. But you know what? That's the imperfection of beauty. This distinguishes something that a robot can do and a machine from what a human can do. And I think in today's world, more and more people appreciate this imperfection, because something perfect also means it's pretty dead, doesn't it?
I think that's the quote of the video for me. And if there's anything that just stamped itself into my mind from this incredible experience, it is that statement. Something perfect is pretty dead, isn't it? I feel that that is such an ironic and paradoxical statement, because for many watch lovers, there's nothing more perfect than a Lange, and yet it is the celebration of the imperfection, it is the freedom for creativity that makes this brand so compelling and so alive to me. But I had one more question. I couldn't help myself. I had to ask Mr. Schmid, who is this brand for? Because I wanted to hear from him as almost an entreaty to you. Who is Lange for?
Everybody that is really into fine watchmaking. Somebody that is really interested in these tiny little details. I can only invite to dig deeper, because that's where we like to discuss. That's a proper conversation, because then, you know, that's where we can unveil the beauty of what we do here.
The beauty and the cost. Yesterday, someone dropped a screw in the Zeitwerk department, and he said, well, that's 21 euro.
Yes.
And I said, no, you can't be serious. 21 euro for a tiny screw. And in that moment where he said, look, losing one is not the end of the world, losing 50 is a big deal. And I just thought that tiny detail tells so much about this bigger picture. Thank you, Wilhelm. That was an incredible experience. Well, there it is, a day in the life of the Lange manufacturer. I have a very large box ticked off my bucket list. My closing thoughts are this. It's a world of AI. It's a world that is embracing automation, and yet Lange remains defiantly human. I ask you this, what do you think, having seen inside this secretive and incredibly prestigious watchmaker producing mere thousands of watches a year? Thanks again for watching Time+Tide. Do let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.